There they go. Devices offline, it says.
Who them boys?
Okay.
There they go. There they go. All right, let's see what it does.
Gentlemen.
Dude.
Start your mouths.
Gentlemen, start your gullets.
Like that.
Start your gullets.
As I spread Corona over my mic.
Oh, why would you do that? All right, we're going to do this share thing, and then we're going to get this show on the road.
Are we already popping right now?
It will be,
It shall be popping.
It shall
and it shall come to pass
be popped.
That
that it shall pop.
Are we live?
Yeah, of
We're
course.
not live, but we're recording though, right?
We're live on Facebook, but we're not live.
All right.
We're live with episode 4 of season 4 of the Salty Dogs podcast. Casey
Nice.
is in studio tonight. We're talking connectivity and the power to create and destroy. Listen in to find out what we mean by that. How about that?
Boomskis.
Ah, there you go.
Hey, guess what question I didn't ask?
What's that?
How to start a watch party. I feel like I finally
It's great.
learned.
All right. Starting the watch party, yo.
I'm ready when you are, fellas. Gentlemen.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Hold on. G-Master J hasn't...
I'm not ready.
He's the official finger man.
All right, you're right. That's my bad.
He does.
That's my bad.
Stop
I haven't
it.
been. I haven't
Stop
been here
it.
for a while.
Stop it.
I haven't
Stop
been here
it.
for a while.
Boy.
All right. So
Yeah, we've
that's
changed
going.
things here a little bit.
Yeah.
We normally don't have pants on when we record this.
First of all, second of all,
Did you see that meme of like pastors live streaming from home, and it's like the dude's got half a suit on but no pants sitting on the couch?
I'll tell you, these COVID-19 memes are hilarious.
Hilarious.
My favorite one is there's a very wealthily dressed man who rubs his wrists like this, and he's behind a tree, and he says that face Jehovah Witnesses make when they know everyone's going to be home.
yikes.
Get it?
Casey?
Because of the quarantine?
Yes.
Nah. you get it? Okay.
Nope. No Purell for me.
Casey
actually.
says-
Take a hit.
Casey's trying to.
Oh, God.
I'm a part of that tribe that,
That was
thinks
strong.
that the less that you sanitize your hands, the better.
The better. Yeah.
Well, I licked them right before that.
What up, Darren? Darren Eubanks says,
That's-
yo, yo, yo.
What up? What up?
Young Darren.
We're all sanitizing. Sanitizing
we're
our
not all
lives.
I don't have you in my headphones.
You what?
I can't hear you
You can't?
in my headphones. No.
What?
I
Dang
can't.
it. Me?
Yeah, I can't hear you. Can you hear him in yours?
I don't know. Is it?
Check 1, 2.
I can definitely hear him in mine.
I can't hear him in mine.
He's
I
been
shouldn't have said that.
marketing.
Yep.
He's got a degree in business marketing.
Look, my mom said hi.
Tell your mom I said hi.
You watch your mouth.
What?
Oh, I saw that sly wink.
No, there was a wink.
How about now?
Yes.
There.
All right.
Yep, I can hear you now.
Damn,
Joey
son.
Bond-
it feels...
Joey Bond says, hi, I love you.
Dude, there's a lot of guys. It must be because they're all inside. They're paying attention
Yes.
now.
All right. You feelers ready? Feelers?
I've been
You have your
ready.
feelers ready?
All right. Thank you guys for joining in. We're about to officially go live with the show.
Thank you.
Oh, 15 live viewers. What's up, everybody?
Already.
Quarantine
17.
madness.
Here we
That's
go.
right. Yeah, everybody's quarantined, so
Ah, we getting the mad love.
that's what's up. Say hi in the comments, y'all. Say what's up.
Yeah.
We see
So
him
we
coming
can-
in.
so we can
All right.
shout out. Yeah.
We're ready. Do you have something to start with? We're just going to
I
talk about
actually do
COVID.
have something to start with.
Oh, you have something,
Yeah,
something.
I do.
Okay.
But it's just like a little joke thing. It's nothing serious.
Don't be.
And then we can get...
He's
I
going
got
to
a
be
segue.
freaking cheesy, bro.
I got a segue.
He's
It
always
is very
cheesy.
cheesy.
He's
It will
not
be
a-
cheesy.
He's so
He's
freaking
he's
cheesy.
segging.
I keep
He's
it
segging so
cheesy.
hard.
Beezy?
He's segging so hard, dude.
About that seg life.
Mm.
Seg's the only way that I know.
Seg sells.
No, segue.
3
Okay.
and 2. What's
Hi.
up?
Mm.
Why did you talk at the same time I talked?
I don't know.
Who is that?
Where?
What voice is that?
Which
Doth
one?
I hear a third voice?
Ah.
Is the
Who's-
Trinity complete?
Whose voice is that?
Who is it?
What's up, baby angels?
Baby Angels. What's up, sugar?
Doth that the voice of Kathy? That's Mike Tyson.
Yes, Mike. It is the voice of Kathy.
What's up, guys?
I'm glad you're here.
Good to see you, Broham.
He's smiling so big.
Super
He
glad
is.
to
He's
be here.
cheesing.
He's excited to cast pods.
Yeah, speaking of cheese, Christopher wants to
I
start
am.
with a joke.
No, it's not a joke.
He's
I'm
What
not
is
a
it?
pastor.
He's
I'm not
gonna
a pastor.
he's gonna
that's-
pick a little bit of cheese on this taco for sure, bro.
I'm about that taco life.
Yeah, me too.
Macaroni.
Have you guys ever taken a bath?
Yes.
Do you take baths? Jason, I feel like you're a man that enjoys a good bath.
I'll take a bath if I'm sick. Yeah.
Okay.
Some Epsom salt.
Bro.
Some.
So my back's been hurt. I've just been feeling tense and stuff. So I hopped into an Epsom bath for 20 minutes.
Right.
Got some whole tones playing. And bro, I just
Deftones or
whole tones.
oh,
right.
It was the most relaxing thing I've ever done.
Was it?
I felt like it was great.
So
I feel like there's been so much worry going on, and I just needed a nice Epsom bath.
So you were listening to whole tones and you put Epsom salt in your bath. If you were listening to Deftones, what would you put in your bath?
A microwave.
hate and discontent. Hey, first of all, don't hate on the Deftones. All right.
Hey,
Yeah.
Deftones go hard, bro.
You were gonna say Defcones like a
Definitely.
Mexican.
That's funny.
So anyways, it was really good. Casey, do you ever take
Is
a
that
nice
what you?
bath?
Do
Is
I
that
take
your
baths?
start? A bath?
It's something I did today. I took a bath. It was nice.
I'm kind of the fan of the place where you don't take baths like every single day.
I'm
Maybe
not
like
about
every
that.
other day.
How many times do you bathe a week, whether shower or bath?
I used to shower every single day. Now it's probably every other day.
Depends on how dirty I am, I guess.
It does depend on how dirty I am. It depends. That's the answer. It depends.
It depends.
Depends
but
on what I did and where I went.
It's very rarely ever more than 3.
3 times a
day?
week
Mhm.
for
No,
you?
a week. A week.
Really?
Yep.
Actually, in the winter, I'll shower multiple times a day because the cold will stick to my bones, and so I'll go jump in a hot
Right,
shower
just want
to
to wash that
to
frost
thaw.
off,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll thaw it up.
Just gotta
Yeah.
get all the members
So-
working.
So we're in an interesting time. We want to definitely take a moment and kind of chronicle what's happening in March of 2020. Today's St. Patty's Day, March 17th, 2020.
Yeah,
and
super strange.
I ain't
man.
We're
wearing
in
no
a-
green.
We're in an
First of
interesting.
all, so it's like National Get Trash Day. Just
That's
wanna,
pretty much what it is.
Yeah, I just
Right.
want to like really like
It's
you know.
Pour
it's
one
the
for the homies.
it's the Catholic saint.
I'll tell you what.
Right,
Like, why don't you
Patrick?
Why don't you quit pouring one out for your homies and like pour yourself out for your homies? How about that?
Dang.
Amen, Pastor Casey.
Yeah.
I'm not a pastor.
Greater love has no
But I'm
end
not
to
a
this,
pastor.
that he pours himself out like a 40 for his homies.
And the Lord hath poured Himself
That's
out.
that's that Tim Schul translation.
Bro, why are you always knocking the Tim Schul?
I'm not knocking
I'm
it.
going to share a video with you.
I'm
anyway.
sad I even brought it up.
Yeah, you should. be
Gosh darn
sad
it.
About it.
So seriously though, interesting time in our world.
Yeah, it's really strange, man. I don't know. It's kind of weird, man. Like you can't even, and I don't know how I feel about it. You know, my dad and I talk about this a lot, and so I don't know where, you know, it's been. Is it really that bad, or like, are we really? Is this just another case of the media, like, you know, telling us to be afraid of one thing, you know, that's really not a thing. You know, and I don't know, because like you go everywhere now, and we're in Wichita, Kansas. We're not in the epicenter whatsoever.
Right.
We're out in the middle of nowhere, and so it's like, you know, you go and the restaurants are shut down, and all these places are shut down. It's like, man, is it like really that big of a problem? Like, what is it? You know? I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's one of those things where I think it's easy to question and wonder. I mean, there's conspiracy theories and all kinds of stuff going
Until
around.
you're
but-
that person that has somebody die.
No,
you know
it's,
what I mean?
yeah, until you're
Right.
that person and somebody like actually gets it and it affects somebody that you know and love. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. I really think that, you know, our families just tried to posture ourselves in the position of like, let's just do what is recommended. Let's wash our hands. Let's cough into our sleeves. We got the Purell.
Sanitize.
Let's sanitize.
Don't wash your hands.
Let's go on an endless treasure hunt for toilet paper and see if we
Pretty
can
much.
find any.
Hey
and-
man, listen, I live in Mulvane, Kansas, all right, and like we got a tiny ass little store. You know what I mean? Like
And you
it's
got
it's,
Stacks
it's
there?
super tiny. No stacks whatsoever.
Oh, gosh.
Like my mom was like, you know,
tiny ass store doesn't need a lot of toilet paper.
well, they should. Well, they shouldn't, you think? But like it's all gone, like everywhere, bro. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of unreal.
Yeah, I don't think we really want to like give all our commentary and our thoughts on it, but
Right.
just kind of
We're
want to
not.
bring it up just because
Yeah.
it's an interesting time. Schools are closing, restaurants are closing.
Yeah, here in Kansas today,
Got-
I mean, they just officially canceled school for the rest of the
right.
No.
year. Yeah,
So it's
the
just
rest of the
now
school
hitting
year.
here, yeah.
Mhm.
The
with
rest
all
of the
that.
school year?
Yeah, which is only like 2 months, two months,
but
2
still,
weeks.
the
But
fact
still,
that they're
though.
shutting it all down, bro,
Right.
it's pretty wild.
So here's the main thing that I wanted to say about this is I think it's really easy for us to begin to live in fear and to begin to have people in our lives that are making decisions out of fear. Jason, you made a comment to me the other day when we were kind of briefly talking about this, about, what does this say about our country that we can be so easily riled up and, flustered about, something that is serious. It is a big deal, but something as serious as, as trivial as toilet paper, to where, people start fighting and running and sprinting and being rude and ugly and nasty. We're going to be talking about the human nature today,
Right.
but that's kind of what that is. And so the main thing that I just want people to know is that you can take something seriously and not live in fear.
Right, and we certainly don't want to be like insensitive to anybody that's lost anybody to coronavirus, but at the same time, like, okay, what are we really looking at? Because, we can point back to times in history where, like swine flu or whatever it was, man. Like it's that next big thing, that was like, oh well, you better like Y2K.
Yeah, I think obviously
There's a virus, but
time will tell. Like, we're on the front end of this thing, honestly. So time will tell. We'll podcast in 2 weeks, maybe, if we're not all in hazmat suits sitting in our
We'll
basements.
still podcast. We'll just do it online.
We just won't make out beforehand
Yeah.
or after.
That's part of our ritual.
You guys don't know
so
about our after
will
party.
be its effect.
I don't know about your after party. Who are you making out with?
Our wives, bro.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
What do you think I was talking about?
I don't know. You made direct eye contact with me. when you
Must
said
be
that.
nice.
Yeah. Christopher was
Oh,
like,
see.
oh, man.
I'm kidding.
Sorry,
I'm
sorry,
kidding.
sorry,
All
sorry.
right, yeah, no, it's all good, man. Don't worry about it. It was
Oh,
a joke.
goodness.
That was a joke.
It was a good joke.
That was a joke.
It was-
I mean, at least
like
you can
it.
joke about it.
I can.
Yeah.
No.
Gosh darn.
So,
Really did
anyways,
that one
don't
a
live in
service.
fear, y'all. Don't get that. That's not from the Lord. We've been talking about yokes and what you're yoking yourself up to. Don't live in
Yeah,
fear.
nothing but peace, man.
Yeah, let them yokes be over easy, bro. For real. You know what I mean?
Let them runneth over.
That's right. The yolk runneth over.
Mhm.
From the egg on. I like when the yolk runs off, like onto the bacon, onto the sausage.
Straight onto the toast, bro. Like, I'm a toast guy.
The
You know
yolk
what
on the
I'm saying?
toast.
Yeah.
You like a yolky toast?
I do. I know.
Oh, interesting.
Only if it's sourdough.
Yolky sourdough toast.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
sounds
I got it.
miserable.
Whatever.
Well,
Bad.
Anyways, Casey.
Anyways, back to-
Casey, why are you here today?
Yeah, you really had something you wanted to talk about. You and Jason had a conversation.
No,
that you thought would have been good for the podcast.
Man, I'll tell you, so just coming from where I've been coming from lately, I've just really been seeking the Lord and
Just really
just
diving in.
really
Just
really-
really getting after the Lord.
just
getting your
out there,
focus.
man.
Get my
But-
focus on, bro.
Right, and so the lessons that I bring to you guys are only the lessons that I've learned from my personal life and where I've been at lately. And so when I called Jason the other day, every time, like, I'm driving to Tulsa, so, I work in Tulsa all the time. Jason's one of those guys that's on my speed dial for Tulsa because, him and past Derek Shore and then Jeff
Right.
Jewett. And, because oftentimes, it's a 2.5 hour drive. I just kind of turn the music off and just really drive and like listen to what he has to say to me. And like I called Jason the other day and I said, man, this isn't par from the norm. You know what I mean? It's like when Jason knows when I'm calling him at 7:30 in the morning, bro. Like I'm
Right.
It's about to get
I know what it's
yeah,
about. Yeah.
and we have, and
Well, bro, that's how we started the podcast, though. Those early morning
It's
talks,
true.
they're
Yeah.
still going on, even if the record button's not.
Yeah, man, honestly. And so, and it's been really good. And, I love, first of all, being able to have somebody in your corner, no matter what you're going through it's a huge thing, and just being able to have people like,
I'm the Mick to your Rocky.
right. So just having like people,
Knock him out, Rocky.
yeah,
You're
just,
nothing but a bum, Casey.
I know,
Nothing
man.
but a bum.
I think, knowing you're a bum is where you like get your greatest power. And
Isn't
so
that like the first step in AA?
Oh,
You have
bum
to
power. I've heard
admit
about
that-
bum power.
It's-
Admit that you're a bum.
it's the first step, I think, in
First step.
any like real spiritual growth is to understand and realize your shortcomings and say, wow, I'm really literally nothing before the Lord. And so those lessons that I have been learning and every time that I drive. And so I called Jason one morning and I was just talking, I was like, man, like, the Lord had really been speaking to me. So there's a book that I've been listening to on Audible, and you might want to type this down in your notes. It's by what's his name, Raphael Irwin McManus.
Erwin McMahon.
Yeah, he's the head pastor Mosaic.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Los Angeles, and man, The Way of the Warrior. And if you are a book buff, you need to be reading that book. Seriously. I mean, I've been listening to it like every morning since I've, gone out to Tulsa, and like a lot of that stuff has really been like speaking to me. And so I called Jason.
Erwin Raphael McManus.
Yep. Way of the Warrior. Super good book. Really, really good book.
I've heard of it.
So I've been
Really good
listening to that, and if you want to know what else I've been listening to, honestly, so the Normal Christian Life by Watchman Nee.
Watchman Nee, yeah.
Yeah. So super good stuff. And I called Jason because I was listening to this, and he was talking about, in this one chapter, I can't remember the chapter, but he was talking about like our oneness and our connectivity with everything, and how before sin, before everything, when we were created in the garden, we were in direct connectivity with everything around us. We were in connectivity with God, right? Direct connectivity with God. And then we were in connectivity with each other, right? So man and wife, and the connectivity with each other. And we were also in connectivity with nature. So I called Jason because I was talking, man, like, you ever get those times where like you're just listening to the Lord, and like really just, he downloads so much, and you're just like you're like, okay, man, I'm trying to take
your mind's being blown.
you're like I'm trying to take this all down right now.
Right.
And so he gave me this real heavy download, and so I called Jason, and I was like, man, so I called Jason, and I was like, when are you guys recording next? He's like, next Tuesday. I was like, do you have a host? He's like, no, I literally just
A guest?
Yeah. He's like, I literally just had
I have a host. It's Chris.
Ouch.
He said, no, I was literally just talking to Chris about this the other day, and we didn't have anybody out there, and now you're calling me, because I wanted to, I just felt that it was like super important, but I wanted to talk, so Jason and I got to talking about the connectivity between each other and our capacity or our propensity to either create or destroy within our personal lives.
Right.
And so we got on a really heavy conversation. Like, we were having church for that 30 minutes that we had that conversation. It was good.
It happens.
It was good, man. It was really good. And so,
well, the way you hit me up, man, you called me. I had just messaged Chris that morning, and I was like, hey, what do you think? Do we have some guests? And then Casey ended up calling me or messaging me asking if we had anybody. And I was like, no, I was just telling Chris about it. Well, then we got on the phone, and you told me that one of your buddies listens to the podcast, and that he had mentioned one of those episodes that we talked about from the Bema podcast. So then you listened to the one about the rainbow.
Right.
So, and so you started talking about the significance.
Right. So Daniel Smith, he's a faithful listener to the podcast. He's also a really, really good friend of mine. And, he's one of those guys in my life that I look up to, and especially like since what I've been going through now, like he's been constant there for me, and he knows how much the rainbow means to me. And so he messaged me that podcast, about that Bema podcast. He's like, hey man, like Salty Dogs mentioned this, and I'll be honest, I hadn't been listening to the podcast, I just haven't been on it.
Sure.
And, but he was like, man, you need to listen to this episode. And so that episode about the promise of God, like the rainbow, was really, I don't know, it really drove home for me. But there's one line in that Bema podcast that really stuck out to me.
What was that?
It was that, so the rainbow signified. So like when you look at, so this will all be in Genesis, right?
Right.
The story,
Genesis, yeah.
Right. So the story of creation, but on the seventh day he rested. And so there was this line in that Bema podcast talking about the destruction of the world, like the rainbow and everything else. Like he drew it back to God. Not only does he know when to stop creating, because it would have been an overload, it would have been too much, right? But that rainbow signified that God also knows how to stop destroying.
Right.
Right. And like that to me, I don't know why, like in my life, I was like, whoa, like, and here's the crazy thing about that. So after I listened to that podcast that morning, it was raining down in Tulsa. And so I did our daily work, whatever. And so there's this little sushi joint that I frequent often because it's really good. And so I went there. We got off super early. So I had just listened to the podcast about the rainbow. And so I was walking up to this restaurant after we got off work. And so walked up to this restaurant. I was like 10 minutes early, right? So I went up there, pulled the door, it's like locked. I was like, damn, I got 10 more minutes, until So I turned back around, and I'll be damned, bro. Like I saw the biggest rainbow you'll ever see in your life.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So had I been 10 minutes later, like I would have walked in that restaurant when I ate my sushi, I would have came out.
Wouldn't have even
Would have
seen
never
it.
seen
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? But like, so like that morning, that rainbow, you know, meant so much to me. And I was like, wow, man, it's really one of those things. Did my work, went to that, locked, turned around. I would have never seen it.
Right.
And there it was, you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
let's-
And so it's like one of those things, you know.
Let's kind of recap that for people because you kind
Yeah.
of you breeze through it real
Can
quick.
I recap? Can I recap the Genesis aspect of that? The creating.
That's what
and
I
then you
was
can
going to
do-
say.
And then you can do the other one if you want.
Whatever.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Just talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Genesis, when they talk about the story of creation, they talk about God resting, and the analogy that these guys used on the Bema podcast, and that's widely accepted within Jewish culture, is that our God is a God that knows when to say enough is enough,
Right.
that He knows when to stop creating. if
And
you
he
think
did that by saying, looking at it and saying, it is good.
It is good.
He
My
did by
art
chilling,
is
bro.
complete.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you look at they use the analogy of the statue of David, right? And how one of the big things that stands out about that is the size of the statue's hands.
Right.
And if Michelangelo who made that?
Yeah.
Michelangelo. So if he would have not stopped creating, if he would have kept chiseling away, he would have ruined what was there. But our God is so good that He knows when to stop creating. He knows
Right.
when to say enough is enough.
Right.
And so
Because
there-
it would have been too much. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's always that emphasis of like there would have been too much. You know, and he never gives us too much. He never gives us too little. He gives us exactly what we need at that time.
Right. Yes. And so there's that piece of creation, and then when we look over at the story of Noah, whenever we look at that story is very interesting because it actually, when these guys talk about it, they talk about how all throughout the first 11 chapters of the Bible, so you got the story of creation, story of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the Tower of Babel, Noah, all of these stories that it's setting up who Yahweh is. It's setting up who Elohim is,
Yeah.
and who He is and how He's different from all of the other lowercase
Correct.
g gods
Correct.
that the people of the day worshipped.
Right.
And so everything
And they-
about
and they-
that was
and they-
like, here's how He's different.
And they brought into that the epic of Gilgamesh
Mm-hmm.
and everything else. Like, so how is that story separate from all of that? You know what I
Right.
mean?
And then, so every nation, there's so many nations that have a flood story, a
They do.
story of a
They do.
flood.
They do.
The Aztecs, the Egyptians, everybody's got a flood story in the East. And so when God is introducing Himself to His people, He wanted to show them how He is different. A lot of people hear the story of Noah and they're like, wow, how could a God destroy? But you got to think, when you're hearing this story, and if you're someone that's living back in this day, you're expecting gods to act this way and to do this thing. And the thing that
God's plural.
yes,
It's polytheism back then.
yeah,
you
yes.
know?
So the thing that is different about Elohim is that He knew when to say enough was enough, and He
Right.
knew when to stop destroying. And this is what separated Him and made Him different. He wanted to show that He's different. And you talk about the rainbow, and they actually use the analogy that that what they talk about, the word rainbow isn't in the Bible, but the word is bow.
It's an assault weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's used, and so God not only said, I will stop destroying, but I will take this bow and I will point it towards myself.
Right.
And
Right.
I will be the one,
Which is prophecy.
right,
You know
for
what I mean?
Jesus, Jesus and what's to come. So we see a God that knows when to stop creating and a God that knows when to stop destroying.
Right.
And
so
this is what makes us human.
Right. And so the reason that God knew when to stop creating is because His creation was then embedded with the potential and the power to create. It's not that He stopped making things. It's that He set things in motion so that creation could continue
Right.
through the created thing. That's what we need to understand.
Well,
So
and to carry on our work that he meant
Right.
us to carry on.
Well, He made us in His image, and He made everything
Correct.
in His image. And so on day 3 of creation, you get this word good. In the Hebrew, it's tov. You get it. That's the first time you see it. And then you kind of see it all throughout the rest of the creation story, that He saw that it was good, that it was good, that it was good, that it was very good. And so the first time we're introduced to that word tov in the Hebrew, good, is when God goes ahead and He separates the he calls the dry ground land, and he calls the water the sea, and he sees that the water in the sea is good.
Right.
Or excuse me, the land and the sea is good. And then he produces vegetation and seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to the various
There you
kinds.
go.
Right? And so the land produces vegetation. It bears forth seed that can give forth after its own kind.
Right.
And God looks at that and he says, that's good. And so he continues through creation and he says it's good, and he knows when to stop creating. But it's because he put inside the animals, inside of the plants, inside the land, and inside the sea. Think about that. The animals in the sea reproduce in the sea. The fruit and the trees reproduce on the land. So land and sea, both being the places where seeds are sown, essentially, where things can go in and die and then procreate, recreate.
Oh, it's because the propensity for things on the land to produce is not without water. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
And so, like, we think about that, and so, like, water's an essential.
Right.
But we are 80%, 85%
Something like that,
water.
yeah.
We are.
We need a fact checker on the show, by the
yeah,
way.
for sure.
Yeah.
So,
That'd be good.
but what I was saying was the fact that God stopped creating when he created something that had the power to create,
Correct.
which is us.
Right.
But
Right.
God, here's the other thing, is that God also had the ability to keep creating. He could have kept going. God could have kept destroying too. And so he shows that you can stop.
Right.
And I think that's big. That's important. You know, that is what makes us human, the ability to be able to create and destroy.
Right. So
the fact that we're
we
not
choose when to keep creating and when to stop destroying. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, and so I can take, for instance, as my life, you know, like that creative capacity, man. We are creative beings, man. Like, we are made in the image of God, and so to be able to keep creating or like stop destroying, you know. And so when I look at, okay, everything in our lives, man, like, we are either one thing, we are creating and we are destroying. There is no other thing. You know what I mean? There is no, I mean, even like lethargy, you know what I mean, is destroying, because you are like allowing.
You've ceased.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've ceased to stop creating, and so therefore you are allowing, you know, destruction. And so, like, when we look at that, like, our creative capacity, you know, who we are is, man, sometimes I think maybe we think too little of the fact that we are images of God. You know, we are, when I look at you and when I look at Chris, you know, have I ever really stopped to, like, take into account that you are images of God in my life? You know what I mean?
Right.
Have I ever really, because these things are so complex, man, like the creation story, the destruction story, it's so complex. You know what I mean? Have I ever stopped to look at the complexity around me and look at the complexity inside of a human being like you or Chris? You know what I mean? And to really recognize that, like, what are we supposed to be doing other than recognizing the fact that you are an image bearer of God? And so,
Right.
how often do I forget that? You know what I mean? Because despite, you know, like, what we go through, because I mean, that's a ploy of the devil, man, like, really to get you like not even paying attention, man, because I strongly believe that if you're not paying attention, you will miss something, right? And so the devil is not omniscient, he's not omnipotent, he's not any of these things. So what does he have
Right.
to do? He has to create a net, right? So he's weaved this really fine net, right, to get us to be distracted from the things that are really around us, right? And so Pastor Jeff Jewett, I went to a sermon with him, and awesome guy, man. Like,
Right.
you guys know him.
Our listeners know him, yeah.
Yeah, and he's struggling with his heart issues and whatever, and he's going through some things right now health wise. But man, he was talking about one time, and I took it a step further, because he preached a sermon on what was God. Okay, when it says, "Be holy as I am holy," like, what was God before he was ever ascribed anything? Like, before any human or any being was omniscient enough to proclaim to him or give him, "Oh, you're holy." Before any of that, what was he? He was present, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so I believe, yes, holiness is all these other things, but man, like before anybody could ascribe him holiness, he was. You know what I mean? I am. That's his name. You know what I mean? He's like, well, Moses was like, well, who should I tell? Send me. I'm like, I am, mofo. You know what I mean? Like I've been there. I've done that. I have been here. And so like that aspect of holiness, yes, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, conduct your business as holy, yes, but like holiness, like when I think about it, and when Pastor Jeff challenges me to think about it, is like before anybody was there to ascribe to him holiness, he was. You know what I mean? And so holiness, not holy, but in my mind, when I think about it, like is being present. You know, and so. Like, so he was in obviously in community, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, but he was, you know, and so when he's talking about be holy as I am holy, man, be present as I am present, you know what I mean? And if you are not present, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, I can draw this from me in my life, you know, if I'm dwelling on the past, which I do a lot, you know, I'm dwelling on all these things, all these failures, all these complications, you know, all this really deep stuff. But then also I'm dwelling in worry about the future, like I'm not being present. And if I'm not being present, so when I walk down the street and my head is hung low, so he says, man, like lift up your head, you know, Son of God, lift up your head, because like I remember times where I'm like I just walk, my head hung low. I'm missing, you know, anybody that could be around me that, you know, he says like, dude, give to anybody who asks of you. And if I'm not present and my eyes aren't up and I'm not walking like up, you know, with my vision forward, then like you're going to miss something or somebody, you know, and dude, he's present, always present. And so being present and like trusting him with my future and also trusting him to forgive my past. And so like walking in that present, that's holiness. You know what I mean? To me in that sense. And I'm not saying that's the whole thing. This is just what I'm thinking about, man. But like being present in other people's lives, because like what I could walk right by you, Chris. I could walk right by you, Jason, and not even understand or know that like I could be a blessing or I could be light or darkness to somebody else that's like literally right there.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like you're saying like we have a choice in everything that we do. There's always a choice, and if you were to go back and listen to episode 2 of the Bema podcast, they talk about the fall. And even the story of Adam and Eve being created. And one of the most widely accepted kind of points of view of that story that we often miss with our Western culture eyes is that story is actually about what it means to be human. And yeah, I'm not going to summarize the episode, but go listen to it. The big overarching point that they talk about in Jewish culture is that we are not animals. You know, that we are not a beast.
Right.
We are human beings. We are image bearers of God. And with that comes a responsibility. And it, you know, a beast, you look at a beast, you know, a wild dog or a wild animal, what is it going to do? It's going to do whatever the hell it wants to do in whatever moment it wants to do. If it's hungry, it's going to go gorge and it's going to eat. If it wants to have sex, to reproduce, it's going to go do that. If it wants to kill, it's going to do that. There's no fighting that carnal instinct that's within it. And by God being a God that says he knows when to create, he knows when to stop creating, he knows when to stop destroying. We are made in his image. We have that in our being. We can say no to things. We don't have to just be someone that gives into the carnal desires that we have. We don't have to be someone that just continues to do the bad thing, the sin, the whatever it is in our lives. We don't have to keep doing those things over and over again. And that's what I find so interesting about this topic is that is what makes us human.
Right.
We have that. And, you know, Jason, I know you and I have had conversations about, I think it's in Romans 8, where they talk about feeding the flesh or feeding the spirit, you know, that kind of thing, like sowing. I know you've used the analogy of basically exuding death or life by your actions.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like that's pretty relevant to this topic. I don't know if you...
Sure. Well, I want to take it back just a little bit because I think we skipped over something that's pretty stinking important when we're talking about this, having the Lord actually, we are given that ability to create or destroy, and he's put the potential within us to continue to create. And it's not just procreate like human beings, but
Right.
if we think about the whole fruit aspect, well, then when he plants his seed inside of our lives of the Holy Spirit, well, then that Holy Spirit then begins to give forth fruit, that the purpose of the fruit
Yes.
is to have a seed that can give forth after its own kind. And so literally the fruit of the Spirit in our lives exist so that others can have that planted in them, so then it's birthed in them as well. And then the same thing happens. They bear fruit, then they bear fruit, then they bear fruit. Fruit of the Spirit, I pray for it for the wrong reason, bro. Like, I think about the sin in my life, and I'm like, God, give me patience. God, help me to show love. God, help me to be gentle. God, help me to have self-control. Please, I need to
Right,
overcome this
right.
sin. And I'm trying to bear forth fruit of the Spirit so that I can be the one that consumes it. But that's not why
Right.
fruit is born,
And let me
right?
and let me speak to that real quick, man.
Drop some knowledge.
Dude, I'm about to drop. Y'all didn't think it was gonna go back to trees.
I
did
need
you?
Casey to drink some coffee or something. He's too
Yeah.
chill for me right now.
Dude, I've been changing.
You're throwing
man.
me off.
Yeah, no, man. My life has been changing, dude, and I'm a lot more chill than I used to be. But, dude, honestly, this is where I was gonna go with this, and I'm so glad that even Chris brought it up, because like I knew that this was, I was up the other day at like 3:00 in the morning. I woke up at 3, obviously 3, and like I was like, man, like what do you want to tell me? And pertaining to the fruits of the Spirit, right? You've always heard me say, and I've said this, and I said it without knowledge. I said it without, I was just kind of prophesying that thing into the darkness, right? So the fruit in our lives is for consumption, right?
Right.
It is not for our consumption. It is for other people's consumption, so that they may taste and see
Trees aren't cannibals.
that the Lord is good, and that the goodness of the Lord leads men to repentance. And so,
Right.
man, like I'm about to
Do it.
I'll drop it as best as I can, man, because I still hadn't like figured it out, man. But so we're talking about, man, this is so interesting. So the fruit of the Spirit, right? This is so and this is right where I've been at, right? Chris, you saw that.
Yep, the whole
Like,
time.
like the whole time, my Bible's been turned here to Ephesians, and if you have your Bibles, and I hope that you do,
And not just the ones that glow.
All right, David
Yeah.
Platt. That's
No,
his
so-
opening line.
So
Every time.
I've been in, and Jason, I talked to you, what, 4 weeks ago, almost a month ago,
Sure.
telling you that I was in Ephesians,
Yeah.
5, 6, 4 and 5 and 6, and so this concept of fruit, right? So, man, all right. So I'm gonna lay this on you as best as I can. So it says that, we are. I started here in this verse in what I think Ephesians 5:14, which is this is why it is said, "Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." Man, so the deeper and deeper that I delve into like tree biology, the deeper and deeper that I understand, man, like Christ's teaching on "I am the vine, you are the branches" is the most prolific, it's the deepest teaching. Honestly, in my life, just from where I'm at, like it is so deep. And so when he says that, okay, I'm the vine, you're the branches, right? So he is the trunk in this instance, right? We are the extension of him, right? But we are all part of the same body. So I look at the tree.
Or is it
Right.
connectivity?
Right, connectivity, exactly. So, which is where I wanted to go with this episode, and our connectivity to him, and like our connectivity to each other. So, when we're looking at the body of Christ as a tree, as he was saying, dude, like the entirety of it, we are extensions of him. He is like so there's this static and this dynamic aspect. Okay, so you have, dude, everything within the Spirit is so dynamic. Our lives are so dynamic. Everything is so dynamic, right? We the wind, we shift and we change with the wind, man. Like people will give up on you. You know what I mean? Like there will be hurts and there will be pains and there'll be all of these things, man, all these winds like crashing in on you, right? So as I look at the branch, like what are we supposed to do? He says, you are a branch, you are an extension of me, although you are a part of the entirety of this organism, right? So when we look at Christ as the head, or we look at Christ as the trunk, we are all branches, right? Every one of us. So when I look at the tree, when I go and look at it, like, man, like we are all extensions of this main organism, right? And the totality of this entire organism is survival, it's growth, you know. And so when he tells you that you are an extension of me, when you are a branch, I'm like, and I looked at this and I said, man, like, what am I supposed to do? You know, and so when you look at what we're supposed to do, right, we're a branch, we're an extension of him. What does a branch do? So when I look at it like as an arborist, I'm like, what is a branch supposed to do? A branch extends itself so that what? So that it can do one thing within the process of photosynthesis, so that it can live in the light, my man, you know. And so we extend ourselves out. We grow ourselves out to the light. It says, what does it say? Live in the light as I am in the light, right? So we look at this, and this is what's so interesting, because I have to draw this back to when I was researching that, you know, when Jesus went to the woman at the well, and he said like, man, anybody that comes to me will have rivers of living water flowing from within them, right? And so what are we talking about? We're talking about the Spirit. Right, that's the Spirit. Okay, the Spirit of the Lord should be rising within us. And so I'm thinking in my mind. I'm saying, okay, well, how do I draw the Spirit from within me? Right, and so he drew me to this photosynthetic process. So as we're living in the light, so as a branch biologically, as a part of the tree, is living in the light. Right, so the leaves just like extend out like this, right? So the branch extends out like that. It opens its folds like that, you know, to only do one thing, which is to accept the light. Okay. And so as those leaves take in the light, right? So at the base of the petiole, there's a stomata, right? The stomata, and like, don't let me lose you here, because
I love it when you talk botany.
Because I want to tell you, I want to tell you how you're gonna draw the water of the Spirit from within you. And this is part of my problem. That's been my problem for a long time. This is how you draw the Spirit from within you, because not only is He the light, He is the Spirit, right? So He is the true light. He came there. He I am the light. I am the way. I am the truth and life, right? And so when we exist only in that propensity, which is to extend ourselves to do one thing, which is not to produce fruit, which is not to produce anything, man. It's for one thing. It's so that the leaves that we have right on us will soak in the light. Right. Now, when we soak in the light, now this is the crazy thing about trees, okay? So we were always thinking about, okay, well, in you know, the sense of gravity, like how does a tree move water up through? So what happens is, like, as the leaves are in the light, the stomata open, right? And so hydrogen molecules are linked together. So the stomata, they release those. It's a chain of molecules, right? The hydrogen molecules, they are evaporating into the air, right? So as the tree is literally like spread into the light, the stomata are open, right? Guess what happens? As every single hydrogen molecule is evaporated into the air, it pulls another one up. It pulls literally from the trunk, from the ground, all the way up. Because it is living in the light, because that branch is living in the light, it evaporates those molecules. It pulls that through. So
pulls the water through.
Pulls the water through, because those hydrogen molecules are linked as you live in the light, as I am in the light, right? So I'm thinking about this. I'm like, dude, like, how do I pull the Spirit up out from within me? Live in the light, man, because that's the only way that it's gonna pull up through. And so I take this lesson from my life.
That's good.
No, I take this lesson from my life, because, okay, so when darkness falls, when it's nighttime, the stomata close. There is no photosynthetic process happening. There's no hydrogen molecules pulling up through,
right,
because it's dark. As we live in the darkness, right? And so for a long time, and so I can reflect on times in my life, man, like where I've been so frustrated. I'm like, well, why am I not, you know, bearing fruit of the Spirit? Now, in this passage, he says the fruit of light He says, don't be associated with the fruit of darkness, but the fruit of light, right? So that fruit that we're talking about is only conducted through the fact that we are living in the light. And so I've spent a long time in my life, you know what I mean? And so I hate to bring it back to some damp shit, bro, like where it's like, where, my marriage and things like that, but like I have to draw from like the things that I've experienced. And in my life, I was so consumed, right, with the things that happened to me, like the trauma, the darkness. I was so consumed that I was not living in the light. I wasn't producing anything, right? And so when you look at a tree, if you're not producing, right? If you're not living in the light, you're not producing, it dies instantly. Okay.
Right.
I mean, literally, like it's a process of failure. And so if you don't have enough to produce from the light that you're living in, you will naturally take from your reserves. Trees form, reserves and carbohydrates, starches. It's just a form of sugar. But like, if I'm living in the darkness and I'm not producing, I'm going to live off my energy reserves. Until those reserves are
done,
completed,
and then you die.
Completed, and then you die. And so I look at these things in my life, where I had been living in darkness, bro, and like that was the most profound. I mean, these are things that I'm still unpacking just from that one teaching alone, bro.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like it is so deep, like living in life and producing something. So not only that, the fruit of light, you know what I mean? Like, so living in the light, what does that look like?
That's what I was going to ask. That's what was going to be my question.
Right.
Like, what does it
but there's that
look
verse,
like to live in the light?
There's that verse in Romans, I think it's Romans, it says, like, reckon yourself as dead to sin, but alive unto Christ, right? And Christ says that, dude, I am in you, you are in me. I am in the Father is in me, and that life is within you. So what does it look like to live in the light? That's honest, that's death and life. You know what I mean? Imagine.
Yeah.
So I was living in this place where I was hiding, right? Hiding. And so I look at that. And so I came down to, like, every time they were hiding somewhere, where were they hiding? Do you know? They were in a cave. David.
Oh, okay.
All this, they were in a cave.
Yeah.
Lazarus, when they buried him, he was in a cave.
Yeah.
Right. And so it says,
place where light literally could not.
Exactly. So you look at the tomb. Right, there's no light there. It's darkness. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing there, man. Like it's darkness, it's dryness. So, but like this verse, wake up, sleeper. First of all, this is the story of Lazarus. Okay,
right.
Wake
yeah,
up, wake up, sleeper. Rise from the dead, and Christ will shine. So wake up, sleeper. He automatically speaks life into your life. He said, arise. Right, wake up. Right, wake up from death to life. Arise. He had a choice. Lazarus, come forth from the tomb. You know what I mean? Lazarus, come forth. He came forth. You know what I mean? And then Christ was shone on you. And he met Christ where he was at. He took off those grave clothes. He met Christ where he was at. That's death and life. That's darkness and light. You were dead in your trespasses. You were dead. You were in darkness. You know what I mean? But now you are light in the Lord. That's why he says, reconcile yourselves as dead unto sin, but alive unto Christ. Light and dark. You know what I mean?
It's a lot, Casey.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, it seems like, excuse me, the Lord's been really taking you on a journey there. I feel like I'm trying to process as you're telling me, because you're giving us like this whole journey of everything that you're learning, and I'm like, oh man, you've thought about this stuff, for days and for hours, and so I appreciate you dropping that on us, man. There's a whole lot of deep stuff going on there. I want to get back to this idea of creating and destroying, because you mentioned it. You said you didn't want to get too deep on it, but you literally had the power in through your actions, whether or not to live in the light or live in the darkness,
right.
And depending on where you chose to be, was it determined whether or not you lived in such a way that you created and continued forth
Correct.
life, or whether or not you destroyed.
So you're observing that these are connected, like these creating and destroying, living in the light, living in the darkness.
Oh,
these
absolutely.
are interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about like being the branch and living in the light. If you're doing that and living by the Spirit, which is what you're talking about, right? Drawing from that Spirit within and living in the Spirit, you'll bring forth life, right? But if you
Fruit,
live
the fruit
yeah,
of light.
but
which
if
is
you live
the fruit of
according
the
to the
Spirit.
flesh, then you'll die. So that
Right.
takes me back to this whole being made in the image of God, but not being made like an animal. An animal cannot subdue its desires. It cannot subdue its flesh nature. An animal can't subdue its nature.
Right. Yeah. A bird can't be like, I'm just not going to migrate. This isn't a Disney movie. He
Right.
doesn't just
Yeah.
stay behind. It
And
just
if
like,
it does, there's
oh,
probably something wrong with
right.
it.
Right.
There's like these biological animal instincts that are built in, and when they trigger, there is no going against those.
Right.
It's not like that with us.
Exactly. So as humans, we experience these desires. We experience like rage, the desire to consume, the desire to destroy. That's what hate is, right? I tell you, if you even hate your brother, that you've already committed murder.
You're
And
destroying.
so you're destroying from the hate that's within you, right? The lack of self-control, you begin to destroy. The lack of patience, right? You think God has he's patient, not like some no patience, but he's patient with you, hoping that his kindness will lead you to repentance because he doesn't hope that anyone perishes.
Right.
And we know that if that patience is withheld, or if it's not withheld, well, then it brings forth a wrath that destroys, right?
Yeah.
So all of that fruit of the Spirit born out of us that
Right.
God has put in us continues that life cycle.
And so this is all like it comes back to producing or not producing. You know what I mean? That's death and life. And the fruit of the Spirit. Like, man. And this is the thing about the fruit, right? And you and I talked about this, which was that within the fruit there is seed.
Right.
Okay. So as the way that a tree or a plant like that reproduces, it drops its fruit, and that seed falls to the ground and
And
dies.
dies.
Right. And so we're looking at like the fruit in my life. It should do one of two things: either it's not going to produce or it's going to reproduce. And that fruit of the Spirit, right, when it's consumed, automatically drops seed because there's seed inside of the fruit, right? And so, like, that reproduction aspect in other people, we have the power, like, within ourselves well, not within ourselves, but you know what I mean? Like, to reproduce that. And, like, when people consume that, like, there's seed inside of that. It reproduces itself.
Right. So
after its own kind.
When you act in love, you plant the seed of love that can bring forth more love.
Right.
When
When you
you-
act
right,
in
it's the
patience, or when you act in self-control, or
kindness,
when you act in
gentleness,
kindness, gentleness, all those things, like
self-control, right.
you're reproducing the fruit because there's seed inside of that fruit, and it's being consumed by the people around you,
and then
Yeah.
it has the power to birth that within them.
and it births life.
But
Right, so
sometimes
it just-
that only happens through death. Going back to the seeds.
Correct.
There's a band that I like. It's called My Epic, and they have a line that says, "Seeds will never bloom till they die. Wicks will never burn till they're on fire." Like this idea that like there has to almost be this death before life can come.
Yeah. Well, Jesus says it in John 12:23 and 24. Jesus replied, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." So
Right.
on what day, what did the Lord create the plants that gave forth seed to give
Right.
forth after its own kind?
Right.
Third day.
The third day.
Yeah.
And then Jesus died on the cross. And
course
then
he
on the
did.
third day,
Of course he did.
That Jesus, of course he did.
Of course he did.
so he
That-
died.
he's a
He was the
rascal.
kernel of wheat that fell into the ground. And then 3 days, on the third day,
But think about that.
he
But think
gave
about
forth.
the death of ourselves, like always.
That's where I wanted to go.
Right. And so
Let's talk about that.
And God spoke to me. Here I go again, man. I'm sorry. This is just what he's been saying to me. He's been speaking to me about a couple of different things. And so he was talking to me about like my life, like to where like our propensity to destroy, like never like gets outside of his grace to restore and his grace to bring something new. And he was talking to me about this through a forest fire. So I had,
Right.
I had a vision. Lean back.
Want to lean back.
So, this vision of I saw a forest, right, teeming with life. You're talking about like, birds in the trees and like everything within there. It was teeming with life, and then
Yeah.
instantly the vision went to a forest fire. So everything was on fire, And then he took me to like where it was done burning, and like there was nothing there. Like you couldn't hear any life, you couldn't hear anything, right? But he was speaking to me in the fact that, like, so we set these fires in our lives, we destroy these things in our lives. And brother or sister, if you're listening to me right now and you've destroyed something in your life, I'm telling you, I'm right there with you, because I set that shit on fire for real. And my entire life, has been burnt to the ground by my actions. And so I want to tell you what he spoke to me, because it's encouraging. When a forest burns down to the ground and you hear only silence and there's nothing there, all of a sudden, like there comes life. And actually the nutrients and the things that come to the ground, when a forest burns, actually gives life. And it's actually a catalyst to life. It propels life in like a really, 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 really fast. So what was not there anymore is actually there, like thriving more so than could have ever been before. Because like when that stuff gets burnt down to the ground, like, man, like, and so he took me directly to this thing. So when the forest gets burnt down to the ground, there's new life, and the new life thrives way more than the old life that was there. And so that forest eventually, after you give it time to grow, will actually bring forth way more life than was ever there before. And so he took me here. He said, look at Christ's life. He had a human body. You know what I mean? Like that was his life before the death, before the destruction. That was our human choice to execute him, not crucify him. We executed him. Okay. And after that time of growth in the tomb, what happened? A new life sprang forth that was way more glorious than the past life.
Yes. Yeah. My father-in-law, he lives on some acreage, and he's got all these, what are those, like stickers out in the field? Like it's beautiful. I've wanted to take families out there and photograph them, but it's a ridiculous amount of stickers. So he started the process of burning the fields, and he burned all the fields, and man, they just lit up. They ignited. Maybe that was a week and a half ago. I mean, there is greenery budding through. I mean, it was just charcoal and just, I mean, it wasn't charcoal, but it was all black and
bro.
just dead and burned.
Well, what did it mean that Jesus
crazy.
said that we would be baptized by fire? He would burn up all the old and then make a way for the new.
I mean, you can just go right into the marriage analogy of burning up the impurities of gold and all this stuff. There's always this death or releasing of something.
But see, think about this. We talk about the power to create and the power to destroy. I think oftentimes we see the power to destroy in a bad light. Like we're going to destroy others, we're going to destroy ourselves, that kind of thing. But we actually have the power to destroy in a way that is beneficial, right?
Well,
Unless a man dies to himself,
right? And
he can't follow me.
I heard something from T.D. Jakes actually when he was talking to Elevation Worship, man. Like he was talking about the crushing process, and then like Stephen Furtick asked him, okay, so do you think that like God does it by his own hand, or like what is the power of consequence there? What's the power of consequence? A man makes his own decisions. And T.D. Jakes says, and this is like blew me away, man. I actually started crying because it was just so profound to me. And it might not be super profound, but like to me in that moment, it meant something really, really heavy to me. It was like God will either use his own hand or use your own. Ooh. You know what I mean?
Dang.
And I was like, dang, son, like that process, and
TD.
even, and so we look at the process of life, man, like we look at the process of nature, right? And when we destroy, we are not outside of the capacity of God to restore something and to restore it more so than like thriving more than it had ever been before, man. Like, should we go on sinning that the grace of God can abound? Absolutely not. Yeah. No, we shouldn't. You know what I mean? But some people like me, man, like, that lesson doesn't come unless you have that. You know what I mean? But you will never outdo God, first of all. Okay. And I'm not talking about, you'll never outgive God. No, listen, man, like you will never destroy your life so far beyond the propensity of God to be able to rectify that and make something new out of it, because his grace abounds so much it abounds so much further than anywhere we can possibly go. And that sounds bad, and it shouldn't be like that, you know what I mean? Like, but when I look at my own life, or when I look at these things, man, I look at like all this, like you look at all this destruction, you know what I mean? Like, and these people that are with me on this podcast, man, like, you know, you look at all this destruction, you are not outside of God's capacity, his ability to make something so new out of this that it will thrive so much more, because out of destruction has always wrought something that is so much better than what would have been in the first place.
Dude, how crazy is it that there's a death that destroys the potential to create new life, and there's a death that is the potential to create new life?
Right.
There's both.
Yeah.
So
Are you talking about a literal death and then a spirit, like a consequential kind of death that happens when we...
yeah, just that whole die to self, right?
Right.
Like, I'm going to die to myself, die to my flesh, die to those desires, those animalistic desires, to hate or to, yell or whatever it is. I mean, think about just relationships, right? You can either partner with life or death in the words that you speak. And so I literally have the power to destroy people with my words, right? The things that you can say to people can really, truly tear them down.
Absolutely.
And what happens is, just think about people who grew up and they have parents who were, they just have these traumatic experiences where they were told that they were worthless and that they were pointless and they would never amount to anything. And so as those words were going forward, they're destroying that person. Right. So that person ends up having depression, or ends up having sexual addiction, or
it ends up destroying the rest of their life.
Has a propensity to like binge on alcohol or drugs or whatever it is to numb the pain that was caused by the death that was spoken over them, right? And so it's pretty insane to think about that. But on the flip side, we have the ability within us to speak words, right? That's how the Father, I mean, he looked at the face of the deep. It was empty, void, without purpose. It was chaos. He said, let there be light. So it was by the word of the Lord that the light came forth, right? So he shined the light on it first, right? And then he began to fill it, and he filled it with potential to bring forth more life and for everything to bring forth after its own kind. And so as we continue journeying this, the face of the planet, right, and we're in relationship, you were just talking about way earlier in the podcast, like, I just pass by you, and if I'm not present, if I'm not thinking about it, I can just go right by you and forget that you have the image of God on you.
Right.
But like, how often are we ever reminding anybody about that image of God in them and what that really truly means?
Not
like,
enough.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's the community, man. Like, that's the source to the sink. And so, I'm sorry to cut you off, Chris, but like, so when we look at the tree, right? What happens with the tree? Like, it takes in these nutrients, like everything that's essential to the growth of something, and immediately the source, right? Not a pun for your church, but like the source, right? That's taking in all this stuff immediately brings those nutrients straight to the sink, which is the lower part of the tree, which is not yet a producing element of the tree, but it is, and it shall be, and it will be a producing element of that tree. That's why, like, everything that we take in, these things, like, we should be pouring into each other, being light. It says, you are light now in the Lord. You know what I mean? And so every time that you go to somebody or you go to another person, right, you are a light that is giving birth to something, right? So everything within the biological function of a tree, it needs light to exist. And when you are being that light to somebody else, you are literally being life to them.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's huge. Chris, what are you thinking about?
I mean, I guess I'm just thinking about, at what point does the light bulb go off? Like, when do we have the light bulb moment for, like, oh snap, I need to stop destroying? Like, when does that point come? And then even when the light bulb moment does come, like, that doesn't necessarily mean, like, I know we've talked about before, like, sin in our lives and wanting to put it to death and just wanting to be done. For me, I often have a short fuse and get really angry and will lash out at my kids for spilling their drink or just something trivial that doesn't mean anything. And then I have that happen and I'm like, dang, I want to stop sowing death into the environment. At what point does that, I guess that's the thing that I'm processing when I'm going through. It's when does this life give birth and this life is permanent, or maybe it's a long death process, a burning of the fields. I'm not
right.
sure.
but it's like that also breeds right into connectivity with each other. Like we are so integrally connected to each other, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that like once we, you know, like Watchman Nee said, like you've had this like point where you reconciled yourself dead unto sin but alive to unto Christ, you know, and that connectivity with people, you know, I think that this is the crisis of our age, more so than coronavirus or more so than anything else, is the fact that we, you know, I look at this and it's like social disconnectivity. You know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, disconnect socially, and I think, you know, that's been the ailment of our entire society for a long time, is social disconnectivity. It's like, what are you talking about? Like you don't want to get together with people that are like more than 50 together or not. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? The ailment of our society, the ailment of our church, the ailment
separation
of ourselves is that we can't be a light to each other, you know, unless you fulfill the law of Christ, which is love. You know, and I think that the more that we're disconnected from each other, which is the point, this is one of the points, man. It's like, you know, when we were in the garden, you know, we were connected with everything. And I think that one of the big curses of that was disconnectivity. Like he disconnected from his wife, you know, and he disconnected from God. He disconnected from everything. And I think that the more that we move towards connectivity with each other, right? So you look at the gifts of the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit. How am I able, like, if I'm not able to get together with you so that you can consume those gifts or those fruits in my life, then how the hell am I supposed to, you know, pour into your life? You know what I mean? And if you have a specific gifting that the body needs, like I need prophecy, I need, you know, these, need Chris, I need Jason, I need those people in my life, and you know what I mean? And more often than not, the fact is that I can't get together with these people. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that personally. I'm saying if we're supposed to be pouring into each other's lives and I can't even get a hold of you, then maybe, you know, we might want to reconsider, you know, some things, you know, because I believe wholeheartedly that, like, when we get together, like, you know, with the body, and like, you know, we often want to wonder why things are so hard in our personal life, but, you know, like, we are a sheep away from the fold, you know, 6 days out of the week, and then we come together on 1 day a week and then like act like that's enough, and it's not.
Yeah, or wonder why we're struggling through the week.
Exactly. And then like, you know, you hit up these people, like you hit up whoever, and I get people are busy, whatever, but like that connectivity, I think that we've lost that, and I think that because we've lost that, we've lost ourselves, and we've lost the mission of the church, honestly, because where you go, I'll go with you. You know what I mean? Like that connectivity with other people. Like I'm going everywhere he sends me, and everywhere I set my foot, he's going to be. You know what I mean? And like we lost that connectivity. And the more and more we lose that connectivity, I think the more and more we lose Christ in our lives.
Yeah. And you know what's really interesting about that is that, you know, we can stay connected and not be known. And I think it's in knowing and being known that's where life happens.
Right.
You know, you can be a part of a life group or small group or whatever, go in and drop a bunch of BS every week that's not real, and that isn't sharing any parts of your life, that's just peeling back the curtain just enough to share aspects of you to where there's no growth. Right. It's stagnant water, but it's only until you allow yourself to be known and to know others that's when life, like, it comes out of those other people, you know, it comes out of those other people onto you, and then you're able to give that life as well when other people allow themselves to be known.
You know, I feel like I just made a connection to one of our other podcasts. So we just did the one on From Chaos to Simplicity, and we're really talking about some of the things that we can cut out of our lives so that we can make room for more, essentially, like less being more kind of situation. But I just thought of it in this context. Like you asked the question, you know, when you get to the point, or how do you know? And I just had the thought, like, you got to know which part of the field to burn, right? You got to identify the places where you need to burn it all down, right? And so I've actually been thinking about this with my life recently, and even just today. Yesterday or the day before, I reached out to a couple guys. Actually, Derek Shore was one of them, but for different aspects of my life, spirituality, accountability, that kind of stuff, I'm reaching out to guys, and I want to start setting up some calls so that I can talk about some things with them, because recognize some areas of my life. They just need to burn, bro. They just need to burn to the ground, right? And so it's when you burn those parts of your life, you willingly destroy parts of your life that are sucking
Pain.
life
Yeah.
from other places of your life. You burn it all down, and when you do, it creates the environment for more life to thrive.
I mean, what happens, Casey, when there's like a tree that's got like a dead part of the body on it that's just causing death and chaos in it?
Well,
Like,
they call me, and I now listen. So I come from preservation arboriculture. I don't necessarily I don't like doing like removals and all this stuff. But
Right.
like you call in an arborist, right? Like what does it say, man? Like God's the husbandman. Like he is. He prunes. He does
Right.
those things. And so when I look at my life and like I'm like, man, like you look at the beginning of Genesis all the way to the Revelations, like everything is tree. God's an arborist, bro.
for sure.
You know, and so when people call me in, like when a tree is dying, like I'll make the necessary cuts to try to see if we can get some life out of it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
And so,
But does a tree, does it, I mean, is it weakened by this huge dead thing? Is it like, that's on it? Or is it just like, this is the only part, like the rest of the body?
not necessarily, because the tree is already cutting that part cutting that part of the body off from it.
Right.
Right. So like when you look at the Kodet model, how a tree like compartmentalizes everything, that kind of stuff, like reaction wood, all those things come into play. But like, man, that tree is literally cutting that branch off, and so,
Right.
and
You know,
a skilled arborist, man, will try to get the most life out of everything you can possibly get.
right. When you said that like a tree can compartmentalize and it can kind of cut this thing off.
What is that?
In
It's
our,
isolation.
in our lives, we can do that.
Isolation.
We can sweep stuff under the rug,
Right.
choose to not address it, choose to
Right.
not, and it's just this thing
And so
that's weighty, that's big,
That's living in darkness.
Right.
You know what I mean? That
Living
is
in the
literally
cave.
that is literally living in darkness. You know what I mean? Like this is one of those things, man. Like those lessons that I can take from my life, man. Like I was so obsessed with my own like all the things that have happened to me that I wasn't living the light. And eventually what happened, so exactly what we're talking about. So the dead branch, so the branch, like it declines, right? It's a gradual decline till it gets back to where the tree just chokes it off. And then what does it say? A dead branch is good for nothing but what?
Right, won't bear fruit.
Fire.
Yeah,
Now I want to
burning,
go to
yeah.
this. I want to go to this. And this is another download, man, of the things that he's been saying to me. You know what I mean? When we're talking about, consuming those things in our life, like we're just talking about like, okay, well, whatever fuel we need to burn. Now listen to this. God was talking to me about firewood. I was in Georgia. I think this was 4 or 5 months ago. And I had like this vision, and I was burning firewood. And, God asked me like, what kind of wood burns? And I said, dead wood. And then he like immediately took me to, I think, what was that scripture where it's like, he's like, okay, let me try to download this. Okay. So it talks about like dying to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Right.
like, and the spirit is a consuming fire, right?
Right.
So that fire that is within us, right? He's talking about like we have the propensity, like, right, create and destroy with that fire within us. Like we can either let it get out of control or we can tame it. We can control it, and like, what does it say? Like in James, he's like, man, like the smallest tongue, dude, is like capable of burning down like everything, dude.
For sure, yeah.
And like if that's not tamed. And so because I was driving to Tulsa, and like I was worshiping, and I just had the worship music on, and he was just downloading some stuff into me. And I was like, man, like why can't I just like have this all the time? He's like, you need to feed it. You need to contain that fire within you. And I was like, how? And he's like, dead wood. And he's talking about those dead things inside of us. So like what I want to bring to this fire inside of me. So this is walking in the flesh, walking in the spirit, right? So the spirit is that fire that is burning within me. I want to keep that contained. I want to keep it burning. And so how do I keep the fire of the Spirit burning within me by bringing all that dead stuff,
Right.
dude. Like the death of your own, it's like die to yourself daily. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff that I die to daily, like whatever it may be.
You bring yourself dead and you die, or you burn more.
You bring your dead to the spirit of the fire, or the fire of the Spirit, and that will consume that dead stuff. So the more that you continue, it says walk in the ways of the Spirit, you will not gratify the ways of the flesh, right?
Right.
So you want to keep
Yeah.
that Spirit burning within you, and I'm telling you, you have to burn that like all that dead stuff. And so I learned this too. Like, so there's a bunch of like twigs, there's a bunch of small stuff, but then there's those logs, right? What verse brings up logs to you?
Yeah, log in
The
the
log on your own eye.
And I
Right,
got,
so-
I
so
got
pride.
logs for days.
Right. So when you
Building
so,
I got a forest,
exactly.
man.
So when you look at another person, you're like, oh, this guy's doing this and doing that. Like, man, like look at the logs. What are the logs in my life? The
Right.
big stuff, the real
Right.
big stuff that I can bring to the Spirit to burn with inside me, so that I can keep that Spirit burning.
Burn it up.
Because the more that the Spirit burns inside of me, like there's the more death every single day. And so I know one thing, you know, collecting dead wood, like when I was trying to keep that fire burning, that's work. That's work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it wasn't work for the sake of, I'm not working just for the sake of work. I'm working for a purpose. I'm working for
Right.
the Spirit to be burning. Like, so the work to me is not, okay, well, I'm going to do this work. Therefore, it's like, no, I'm going to do this work because it is work to contain that fire within me. You know, and those logs and those things that I collect, and I hike it up through the woods and I bring it back to the fire. That's work. I'm only working for one thing. I'm working for that Spirit to keep burning inside of me, man. I'm not working. The Spirit's already burning. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm not working for. I'm only working to bring my dead shit to Him. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I'm only working to bring all of that nasty, disgusting stuff so that it can be consumed, man,
Mhm. Right.
by the fire of the Spirit inside of
That's
me.
good.
I like that.
I love that idea, bro, of just like which part of the field needs to burn. Like burn it all down. But
Yeah,
seriously,
and it's crazy, you know, because Larry, like, that's my father-in-law. Like, there were these parts of the field that were not sticker infected, and they marked them off, and they're like, "Hey, this is how we're gonna stop the fire here, and
Yep.
we don't want it to go over here. This is good stuff,
Yeah.
but there's this big chunk over here. Oh, and then there's this little chunk over there.
Right.
And so there
Really-
was like marking lines and doing all this stuff, but yeah, the whole field didn't need to be burned, but there were large chunks and large sections that did.
yeah, and I think that's a big deal. And I think we can all identify those areas of our lives where we really just need to come under fire. I was gonna say, man, like my freaking social media usage, I just need to burn that crap down, bro.
Yeah.
I just need to burn it up. Like, be done. Let it die. Right.
Right.
Because
I just-
that death produces life, man.
Right. And I'm ready for it. You know, I think about that. I cry out to God all the time, like, why this, why that? And I get all pissed off, you know, and I'm yelling at him and I'm pissed because I'm not changing. My heart gets all angry and prideful and stuff. And, you know, but I haven't brought anything to get burned up. And I know there's things that
Right.
need to,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Death is a really poor substitute for life. Yet sometimes I think we just keep sowing death because it's easy. It's an easy thing to do. You know, it's an easy thing to act like an animal. It's an easy thing to let those instincts, those sexual desires, that anger, that lack of patience, that whatever,
Lack of love, all of it.
lack
man.
of love. You know, all of that selfishness. It's easy to slip into those things and just let them boom. I mean, it's just it takes no work to do it. Honestly,
Think
Right.
about arguments, like how quickly reaping and sowing happens there. Right. Like if I make a snarky comment or I get pissed off and I fly off the handle, guess what? Almost immediately the person I'm in an
Right.
argument with is probably
Right.
going to fly off the handle
Right.
unless they're led by the Spirit and then they don't take it.
right?
Right.
Death breeds death.
Right. They die to self instead of bringing about death through self.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Right.
Yeah.
But still, though, and, you know, I had been wrestling with, you know, choice and consequence and God's providence. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, you know, like these things like that, we create death in our lives and we burn down our forests, so to speak, man. Like there's, you know, even in our capacity to destroy, like God is so far outside of that like even his natural design is that life will always thrive, dude. Like life will always thrive no matter and it's actually like when you look at when all these people get like all like burnt up about, you know, when all these people get like super upset about like you're destroying the forest, that's a natural design, honestly. Like like that's a natural design. Lightning, forest fires, things like that, they burn down like before we were ever here, bro. Like that was the design, man. And so you look at, what does it say? Like in Proverbs, man, like look to the earth, it will teach you all things. And so when you look at these,
Yeah, for sure.
when you look at all the design, you look at everything, man, like, dude. And so, yes, our consequences of our choices, but man, you are never going to outgive God. You are never going to like outdo God. Like you're never going to get to a point in your life where you're like, man, I literally burnt everything down. There's no way, because the impossibility is where he exists, man. Like he has to, because like you cannot present an impossibility to him to where life is not going to thrive.
You know what's interesting is that people are afraid of loss.
They are.
You know what I mean? Like we think if we lose something or if something burns up, that then it's just destroyed and that there's no potential for anything else to come.
Right.
But literally it's that whole situation of like, if I let go of what I have an open hand so that I can receive what's next.
Right.
And a lot of times we're afraid, like,
And
I don't want to let that job go. I don't want to let that relationship go, or I don't want to let.
That's such a simple concept, you know what I mean? That people like write it off as like Christianese or whatever. But oh man, like you got to let go so that your hand can be open to receive. And you're right. I think that we are so afraid to lose ourselves, man, that we will never truly find ourselves, like our true self. Because the way of new life was blueprinted by Christ. You know what I mean? Like it is literally death to life. And we think that because Christ did it for us that we don't have to go through it. And that's not true. That process of death to life is so prevalent and it is so necessary. Like, and I'll say this, man, like, because I even though going through what I have gone through or whatever, regardless of whether it's my own fault or not, like I am hopeful, you know what I mean? Like, because he has to exist outside of that. And man, like, like we are so afraid to lose. We're so afraid of loss. We want to hoard everything. Like, look at our culture.
Right.
Like, I mean, good God, like,
Toilet
you
paper.
can't even go to, I can't even go to like the tiniest little store inside of Mulvane, Kansas and try to get some toilet paper because it's all gone. We want to hoard things. We want to take it in. We want to be, oh man, I can't.
So the lesson of tonight is go home and burn all your toilet paper.
I mean,
After you wipe with it, though, of course.
you know what, man?
Burn your feces before the Lord.
Yeah, right. But feces was actually the proponent to new life, man. Like you think about the birds of the air that come and pick off the fruit, and then they go sit on the wires, and they crap it out, and like all of a sudden you have the propensity for something that's, man,
life to come from that.
We don't want to, yeah, man. We don't want to go through.
We don't want to let things die. We don't want it to be uncomfortable. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We just want discomfort. I mean, the flesh wants the easiest route. Whether that's to get the food, the easiest route to get the food, or the easiest route to get the satisfaction or the pleasure or whatever it is. I mean, that's it. And so it takes work to not do that.
Right.
And it's uncomfortable.
Well, it takes courage. Honestly, I think it takes a lot of courage for somebody to literally stare something down in the face and say, okay, like burn it all down. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and that's a prayer. And
willing to give it all up.
That's a prayer. Like, I don't think that people should pray lightly because, I prayed that not only, I know you were there when I prayed that years ago.
Right.
And then I was there when I prayed it with my wife. And you know what I mean? Like when you say something like that, it like burn it all down. Do
you think we're kind of missing some of the topic right here?
I don't think so, man.
No,
because
hold on. I was going to
destruction-
finish making a statement.
Oh, sorry.
With not even talking about like the whole burnt offering thing and like sacrifices the altar and like burning it all up.
Right.
Interesting stuff.
That's true.
Jeff said the problem about being a live offering is that we always crawl off the altar.
Yeah.
Freaking
Like
Jeff
the problem the problem with being a live
Living
offering
sacrifice is
is that we always end up crawling off the altar.
Yeah.
And it's true though, man. Like we're talking about destruction, but like like that destruction, man, like will breed life
Right.
3, 4, 5, 6 times fold. You know what I mean?
It's true. I think we could all really benefit from taking a look at our lives. And we talked about this last time. Like, what can you do? What can you get rid of? That kind of thing. But that was more of like a physical, like, throw out some
very practical.
throw out some old clothes, like get rid of the crap in your closet kind of situation. But like, we're really talking about skeletons in your closet, burning up.
Yeah, now we're like, no, go to that thing that's like deep in your closet. That thing that's like,
right. But it's
you know,
more
you don't want
spiritual
no one-
aspect.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's a good word, man. Casey, thank you for kind of leading us in that direction, like really taking a look at self and saying, okay, what's the thing we need to just burn up, and then allow that destruction to take place, because destruction doesn't always mean that it's going to be completely gone, but that it can create an environment for new things to thrive. I think that's a big, big lesson.
Yep.
That's all Chris says.
Sorry, I hijacked the whole podcast.
No, man.
Are you? Well, I don't forgive you, but
right.
You can go home. Sorry. It's been a little while since you've been on. I just think you had a lot of stuff you've been learning and thinking about over time.
I mean, it was all good. It's
On-
all good stuff. It's all life-giving.
On the way, it is all life-giving. And I was going to say, I think we missed an obvious correlation that our podcast, for the most part, in times past, on certain episodes,
When Chris joined the podcast.
right, we took a turn to where we were less life-giving, and we were a little more destructive in our words. I think our intentions were good, and we don't even have to freaking go there. But
No,
basically,
I wanna go there.
basically for season 4, we said, hey, we want to be loving and life giving, right?
Right.
We want to create, we want to encourage, we want to lift people up, we want to build people up.
Right.
We want to stop tearing down in a bad way. I think we can tear down again in a good way.
Right.
We can burn some stuff up, let it go, and then again create that environment for life.
There's people that destroy things with no intention of it being restored.
Right.
Like,
There you
look,
go.
You
It's
look
good.
at people who like a upset spouse who punches a hole in the wall. Like, they don't want that restored. Like, that's not coming into their mind, like, about that. Or you look at people who it's like, I'm going to take this person down by doing X, Y, and Z. And then there are people like my father-in-law and other people who burn a field and destroy so that something life can come through afterwards. And so
Right.
you got to look
Right.
at your intentions. Are you destroying to leave something in ruins or in shambles? Are you destroying your spouse or your kids or your neighbor or your coworkers with your words because you want them to be in shambles,
Right.
destroyed on the floor? Like, or are you destroying something, most likely
Yourself.
yourself, yeah,
Yeah.
so that life can come from that.
Right.
good.
And I think, like I said, like, I know the premise for this entire season, which was to bring life. And it's like, okay, man, like, if you want to bring forth life and you're really serious about it, I think that maybe you should have a really serious prayer, with the master and say, whatever it takes, and let him burn those things out, because he will, his fire is a consuming fire.
Right.
But he's faithful with everything that you entrust to him.
Mm-hmm.
And, one lesson we can take from the fire is purifying,
Yes.
it's
Good.
It's purifying, and so any time that your life is under fire, man, you can expect that only the things of God are gonna last, right? What does he say? Like, I think that's in Revelations. It's like whatever he consumes, like hay, stubble, all that stuff, it's gonna
I
be
think
consumed.
Paul's talking about that.
Yeah,
The work
but there's
here on earth.
but there's only going to be one thing that's going to stand, man, and like everything that's of him,
Right.
and so I think that maybe, that's
good.
That's a serious prayer,
It's a good place to end.
For sure.
I do, real quick before we go, I do want to pass some salt. We got some live salt.
We got some live
Oh,
salt.
dang.
Some live
good.
salt on Facebook today. So John Sizemore says, late to join, good to see Casey. And of course, you fellas. So John Sizemore,
He gets the 4-cheek salute.
why don't you let him have it, Casey? Do you know what the 4-cheek salute is?
I don't.
It's all 4 of them cheeks, buddy.
Rosy red, John. 4-cheek salute.
Oh, young
This
John
is the
Sizemore.
4-cheek. This is-
It has evolved.
I wonder if he's related to Tom Sizemore, the actor. Maybe
I don't know.
not.
Maybe not.
Yeah,
but,
he is.
But yeah, we appreciate John.
Thank
he's
you.
He's in our group.
For the live
So,
salt.
Check us out. Check out us on Facebook.
Check out.
We have a Salty Dogs Christian Podcast group. You can go join that. We have a website, saltydogspodcast.com. We have a blog, and we have multiple contributors and links to other podcasts and those kinds of things. And Chris, you look like you want to say something.
Nope.
You look like you're about to say, "Stay fresh."
No, I was going to say, wash your hands, cheese bags. That's what I was
Wash
gonna
your
say.
hands.
Wow.
Wash your hands, cheese bags. Don't be nice and give someone some TP.
Don't be nice.
No, I meant be nice and
Don't be nice and give someone some TP.
Yeah.
don't hog the toilet paper. Don't be a jerk face.
We all need it.
Take it
We all-
easy,
we all
crusty
need it.
butts.
Or buy a bidet.
You guys are strange.
Have a good bidet.
Have a good bidet. Four cheek salute to you all.
Four cheek. Yep. That's how we do it, man. We just end on a really bad note where people are like, I can't even believe it. And Casey, by the way, this will be the first episode we ever have to post it as explicit because I'm not going to cut out your shits.
I like it.
It's totally fine.
There was I think you needed more. I think you really should have branched out into some other words since we're talking about the branches and just really just.
We're still live, by the
That's
way.
fine. I know.
And we have 2 live viewers. And your dad was saying
Branching out
what's
to
up.
anything.
Wow.
That's good stuff.
Sorry
All right,
about
we can
that.
stop now.
Excuse me.